Welcome to Chief Evangelist. I'm your host, Ethan Beute. I'm on a mission to explore and understand the role of the Chief Evangelist and the movement behind it. How should CEOs be thinking about it? How does it benefit the company? Which companies and markets need evangelism most? What does the work involve? What does success look like? And who's a good fit as a Chief Evangelist? That's what we're exploring at chiefevangelist.com and in conversations like this one. Today, we're learning from a designer, speaker, and three-time author. He delivers workshops on topics like UX design, journey mapping, and the jobs to be done framework, among others. He's done experience design work for companies like LexisNexis and Citrix Online. For nearly 8 years now, he's been at MURAL, an intelligent whiteboard design space for team collaboration, initially as VP of Customer Experience, and for the past couple of years as Chief Evangelist. Jim Kalbach, welcome to Chief Evangelist.
Hey, Ethan, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, I love your background. I want to talk about customer experience and I want to talk about design, but we're going to focus on the evangelism role primarily here, although I'm sure other topics will bleed in. And I want to start with, from your perspective, what is the most important job of a chief evangelist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there's any one job per se, but I think about it as, what's the function? And I think when you're in an industry that itself is still expanding as an organization, I think it's to your benefit, financial and otherwise, to help the market expand as well too, and expand the thinking around your space. And I think what the chief evangelist is kind of a face of the organization, but the main function is to help promote and expand the field and the space that you're in. And I do it from a customer perspective. So I don't see myself as a product evangelist. I'm a customer evangelist, and I'm evangelizing their problem in that space.
I love it. And this is and I think there's a lot of tension in this. So we'll spend some time discussing this because I've seen both sides of this at different points in my time at BombBomb, where I'm also chief evangelist. And it's this idea of, I'm sure some people internally feel like, well, Jim, why aren't you out there saying mural, 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 mural?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And you're out there with this perspective of, and I'm speaking for you, so then I'll give it back to you and you can correct me. But, rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly.
Mural's not going to be successful if kind of digital whiteboard and intelligent collaboration doesn't become a thing that's fully widespread and adopted, like, say, CRM or something. No company would really expect to go anywhere without some CRM basis. And so how do we make this a normal practice that almost every business or a segment of businesses really need or want? And so you're working probably both sides of that. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that tension.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to the customer perspective. And, my motto when I was the head of the customer experience organization, and even to this day, was that making better customers makes better customers, right? So if we look at things from the customer perspective, you have organizations that we're selling into, where they're just getting used to, like, email. Some of them, I just heard that the other day, they're getting used to teleconferencing, right? Of course, the pandemic was a crash course in teleconferencing, but turning your webcams on is now a new thing. And the point there is that, Mural, when you think about collaboration and workplace collaboration, it's changed a lot over the past 2 years. But we're just part of we're part of a bigger ecosystem that, in order for collaboration to take place inside of an organization, there are the traditional offices, but then there's a whole host of collaboration tools that people have to get their work done, right? Everything from email and Slack to shared drives to, the project management, Asana-like tools and Jira and all these other things. And I think if we were to, again, we're in a space that's expanding, and, like you said, trying to establish a whiteboard as a thing that is part of that tool, a must-have part of that tool set. We can't ignore that ecosystem, right? So if I go in and just say mural, 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 that's great, and I could do that. but it ignores the customer viewpoint, which is their struggle is with all those other things as well too. So if I approach it from that perspective, I need to show how Mural fits in with the ecosystem of everything they're doing. And when I've consulted customers, I've talked more about the best way to make use of Zoom or the best way to make use of Slack. Like that has to be part of my routine when I go out there. So it is a much broader perspective. And I think that speaks to the maturity of the industry that we're in, right? That, whiteboards weren't on anybody's radar 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe a little bit. Now they're a thing, but having this ecosystem view and the customer perspective is why I don't just go out there and say, Mural.
Yeah, I think ecosystem is the key word in this conversation so far. And I really like it for a variety of reasons, because specific to your point, it acknowledges the reality that the customer lives in every day. And it also helps put Mural in context. Like,
exactly,
where does this fit in these other things? When do we do, when do we go to it? In what context do we go to it? For what purposes? And what are all the other pieces around it? And I think it's easy to lose sight of that. Do you feel like there, and I'm not asking to get into Mural business, but like, have you gotten any pushback or push toward more of a product orientation? I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that I think people that are on the sidelines of evangelism, right? They haven't appointed someone, it's kind of happening by default. I think this idea of, we can't afford to invest in something that isn't exclusively, let's sell another seat, let's sell another account, let's land another logo. Is there tension around that?
Not necessarily. No, I don't think there's tension around that. Obviously, we're motivated to sell more memberships, as we call them. But the good side of this, from my perspective, is that Mural is a visual tool, and it's about visual collaboration. So even though I don't say Mural or have logos tattooed on my forehead, when I'm speaking with customers and doing engagements, they're almost always remote. And even if they're in person, we usually have a touch screen or something behind us. And I'm demonstrating, I'm demonstrating the value of Mural. And the way to do that is with Mural, right? So there is this, there's this kind of underpinning of Mural throughout the conversation without it being the logo on the top of my conversation, if that makes sense. So, and almost any presentation or engagement that I have, even in my kind of moonlighting gigs as well too, I'm using Mural for all of that. So it's present. It's so present. You're soaking in it. That kind of thing. You remember that Palmolive commercial? You're soaking in, like, they don't realize they're getting this immersive Mural kind of presentation and promotion from me, because it's just there in the background always, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is more powerful, Ethan, actually.
No question. I mean, that's where I kind of wanted to go too, on the, I'm helping them with problems outside the bounds of what my product solves, right? Like, there's just a level of trust, like, they're going to come to you for all kinds of things. And,
totally,
you probably have to be careful and draw some lines. I mean, you can't give like 15 hours to an account, like solving problems totally unrelated, but that's where the trust is. And that's where the, like, who can I go to? Who can I count on? Whose advice can I trust? Who's not just trying to, pull another dollar out of us?
Agree. And I have trouble saying no, right, in general. So I'll same with you. I'll throw my hat into the ring. And I have been in situations where I totally overextended my promises, or what I could offer. And I've been at the ends of my consulting, not like just Mural or even collaboration. Like, I'm consulting them on like process management and team relationships. I'm at the end of my consulting, like literally stretched. I try to avoid those situations and not overextend, right? But I've done that in the past because of I think it's a willingness, to your point. It's just, are you willing to sit down and empathize from the customer's point of view and solve their problem that they have right then and there, even if it goes, quote unquote, you're coloring outside the lines, right? But I think that's part of being an evangelist. At least it has been for me, Ethan. I'm actually going to ask you, do you do that too? Do you color outside the lines a little bit and talk to customers about problems that are not within your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks who aren't familiar, BombBomb is video email and video messaging. We make it easy to record video messages in place of what would typically otherwise be blocks of faceless typed out text that don't differentiate you, don't help you communicate as clearly because things like emotion and tone are difficult to capture that way. So absolutely. And I'll also teach, like I'll come in, if I get an invitation to present, I've had very explicit feedback that like, that's why we love to have Ethan back, is that, he shares these ideas are incredibly helpful, whether or not you choose to use, BombBomb to do it. And I'm often explicit about that too. And I think I do it for the same reasons that you go outside the lines, which is that it builds trust and credibility. You're a true partner in their success, and they're willing to come to you in the future. And when it does come time to solve that problem, which is digital whiteboard collaboration or video messaging, you're the person that gets the call. And so I'll do a very specific, explicit discovery call around the product, and then do a warm handoff to a salesperson. And I've done that many times before. And in fact, I'm thinking of guests on the other podcast I host, the Customer Experience Podcast. I've had people reach out that that I hosted on the show. That's how we got to know each other. And it's the same thing. Hey, I'm looking at 2021. I'm looking at 2022. Now I'm looking at 2023. We need to add video messaging. I didn't even call anybody else. I just wanted to reach out to you. Right. Can you tell me what I need to know and get me in touch with a salesperson at BombBomb? And so it's that the lines are not direct, and I'm not, and we'll get into this too. I'm not good at direct attribution, but I know if I went to some of our account executives, I know if I went to one of our key sales managers or sales leaders, they would all say, yeah, this dude gives us warm opportunities.
Yeah, agree. And I have evidence, not proof, like you said, the degrees of separation between causality is sometimes pretty far, but I think there's a belief that if you establish that trust in the ways that we just discussed, that the returns will be there. Maybe not within the quarter date your OKR, but the returns will be there. And I have evidence with one of our largest accounts, and that's kind of how that account got started, with just a very, very open mind and willingness from our side to jump in and solve their problems. And I call it co-creation. What we did with that customer in particular was co-creation, because they came to us with a problem we didn't know how to solve either. And we both figured out how to solve that problem together, right? Talk about connection and bonding and trust that you get from the customer when you literally throw your hat in the ring at an eye-to-eye level with them and solve that problem that nobody knew what the outcome was going to be. Again, it's one of our biggest customers. And I believe it's because of that relationship that we established early on.
Love it. Tell me a little bit more about, I like how you said it. You said evidence, not what isn't it?
Could cause that like direct proof and with
proof. That was it. Okay.
Right? Yeah,
so what other kinds of evidence are you gathering for yourself and for the broader conversation in the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think about how to, as chief evangelist, how to show that value. Of course, a lot of folks like numbers. So I'll note the size of the accounts that I've worked with in a quarter or something like that. But I also collect a lot of qualitative evidence, and I think a lot of it's going to come from testimonials and feedback. And when a customer says what you just expressed, Ethan, when they say, Ethan went above and beyond, and I trust him, and I trust BombBomb, right? If you have that quote in an email or coming out of a customer's mouth, I capture that. I said, look at this, look at what we did. Okay, it's one person, so the data point is relatively thin in a quantitative sense, but the depth of the qualitative texture of that quote is really deep. Right? That you have a foaming at the mouth, fanatic customer at that moment, that's gold, I think. So I express that. And a lot of the evidence is with qualitative feedback and storytelling. I see a lot of the part of being evangelist is being able to tell stories, not only to customers, but then back internally as well too. So it's a lot of the storytelling mechanism. Can you undergird that with metrics and data and numbers? It's like, yeah, you can. For me, that's not the point, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you've already inspired me, and I talked with Jen Allen recently too, and I definitely need to be more diligent about this, or I could be at least. I don't know that I will, but I should probably be more diligent about this. And I think it's really good advice for anyone in the role or thinking about getting into the role. I love what you shared there. Get really direct and practical with me. Like, You mentioned an outward direction toward customers, but you also just referred to the idea of bringing customer insights and stories back into the organization. Um, Talk about some of the main, and you mentioned, giving presentations or doing kind of direct consultation and meetings with prospects or customers. Break down, like, what are some of the key activity areas and what are
Yeah.
some of the key channels that you're
Yeah.
using to communicate outward and to communicate
Right.
inward?
Yeah.
Just break down, like, for someone's like, Jim, what do you actually do as a
Yeah.
chief
Yeah.
evangelist?
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
us a sketch.
It's a good question, and I thought a lot about this when I got into the role, and there's all the existential scab picking, like who am I? What am I doing here? Like, because we've talked about this, Ethan, in our group, is that there's not a degree program for chief evangelist. There's no conference for chief evangelists, right? So you get this title because it's out there in Silicon Valley and so forth, and you get this title and wow, what is this? So you go deep, right? And you think about what you're doing. I actually have it sketched out here behind me, and I realize the podcast folks won't be able to see that, but I actually came up with this model it's just the 4 C's. I made it, convenient, mnemonic. And I think the base of it is around understanding the company, our values, our mission, our vision of the future, and working towards that. Some of the way that comes out is through writing and speaking. I interface with analysts. I don't know if you do any of that kind of work, Ethan, but also blog posts and webinars and things like that, right? That's kind of the base. That's the fuel. The fuel is our vision and our mission, and really understanding that and working with that too, helping the marketing team to massage that brand vision and things like that. And then the next level here on the diagram, the blue level, that is internal, and I call that culture. So I go from company, that's the first C, to culture. And that's more the internal one. And what I try to do is, one specific thing to answer your question is, during our onboarding sequence, we have an onboarding sequence. One of the sessions that folks have is with me, and I'll wave my arms like I usually do, and pontificate about our stories. I literally tell stories during
Are
that
these
session.
one-on-one or are these like small
No,
groups?
it's a group. It's a group.
Yeah, same. I do
However
the
many
same
we
thing.
hired
Yep.
in the last month or whatever, and then they'll come through me, and there's usually kind of cohort like things.
Yep.
But then I also do one-on-ones. I also do and I encourage people that if they want to speak on stage, or if they want to even just mentoring their own careers or whatever, I encourage them to come to me as well too. So there's that internal focus. So it's company culture, and then moving out is customers. And I know we've talked about that in our group, Ethan. A lot of work with customers, and coming from, I founded our customer success team, so I know a lot of our customers, and I know kind of our emotions. So, it's very natural for me to be up in front of, in speaking in front of customers, and I do a lot of that. It becomes a little bit more of a VIP event though when you're chief evangelist. When I was heading up the customer success team and I had my own portfolio, it was every month I'd have a phone call with the customer, and it was just kind of ongoing. Now I kind of fly in for a little bit more of a VIP like experience, but doing a lot of that contact directly with customers. And then the last ring out there is the community at large. So being involved in conferences and in communities. We have a community called Work Forward that we're part of. It's an open source community about new ways of working, and we do events with them. And there's other kind of community and more outwardly facing things. And the way I've drawn this is it's a flame. So there's fuel, and then there's a flame, because I see myself as a fire starter, right? And the idea of a chief evangelist is to start the right fires that are going to have the maximum impact. So what I'm trying to do is find, like, can I work with that customer that's right on the cusp of growing to the next order of magnitude of accounts. And if I can time that so it's the right thing, the account team will go, Jim, that helped us catapult that account up there. Or if I do a webinar on a new topic, hey, we got eyeballs on that, or the media's paying attention to that, right? It doesn't, it's kind of like venture capitalism. You kind of place your bets all over the place. And like, I think that's going to be a big thing. I think that, so you don't always win, but you're trying to start these fires that are going to have a maximum impact.
Yeah, and I love the fire. First of all, I love the 4 C's. It makes a lot of sense. Again, just to recap, that was company, culture, customers, community.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this fire metaphor, the idea that people can, that you're, lighting them up and they're carrying it forward and they can light other people up too. And so it's this, and that's the power of the community piece. To me, the community, just to tie back to one of your original lessons here, is that it's about growing the market on whole and creating some awareness, excitement about this opportunity to work differently through something like an intelligent whiteboard. And so like the community is well beyond Mural, and some of them will enter the customer ring. And I don't know about you, but we've definitely hired passionate followers of the company and sometimes even passionate customers. And some of my favorite customers, some of them have been I've been at BombBomb full time for 11 years. I'm thinking of a customer right now who we've kind of playfully talked back and forth about him joining us. He's been a customer longer than I've been an employee, and so it's like, that. So people, the rings can actually move in closer. And I definitely think there's a lot of potential to move community into customer. But that's not really what it's about. It's about spreading, and trusting that it'll come back to the company in the right way.
Absolutely. And also, here at Mural, we also have a couple of rings of networks of folks who are closer to us and actually provide services on our behalf, because Mural is a blank canvas.
Smart,
literally. There's a lot of work like facilitating sessions. So our customers will say, we need help facilitating a session. We can actually tap people in our network. So when we talk about community, it actually inverts. So then we have people who come from our community who are themselves experts in their domain, but then also experts using our tool and in our space. And they come inside and they actually do work for us as well too. So that, particularly for Mural, that outreach, I think, is super important, to be able to have those rings of networks. It's not just community. I bump up to somebody in a forum. It's, people who are very close to us as well too, and can do the same work that we do internally.
So interesting. What is their motivation? Is it purely passion? Do they get account credits? Do they like, how, I know this is a little bit off topic and a little bit in the detail, but how did that program start? It makes so much sense, and I can already see it for us.
I mean, it started like we see it from both sides, right? From the Mural side, but also from the consultant side of things. I think, consultants during the pandemic, they needed new ways to engage. Everybody was trying, how do I engage my customers? I suddenly have to do remote design sprints or, innovation session or whatever it was, or even just having a conversation with your customer as a consultant, with your client. And I think Mural helps them, right? Because it's a new thing, and they can use it as a way to engage customers. So we arm them with free Mural accounts on a limited basis, and give them some enablement and things like that. So there's a benefit immediately there. But there's also, for some of them, there was compensation as well too, or at a minimum, matchmaking. So we would say, hey, our customer wants this service, and you provide it, and then they would play it. So we become the matchmaker. We've also then paid the consultant. So there's financial as well too, right? I think from our side, it's good that we have these networks as well too, because obviously then we have more people who are experts in using Mural in their own work. So they're demonstrating the value to more and more people that we can't do that. We don't scale it, at the way that we can through our network. So it's really about, helping us scale through our networks.
Yeah, I love it. So at BombBomb, we have the inherent benefit that when someone receives a well-timed, well-executed video message, that one of the natural consequences is, oh my gosh, that was amazing. That was different. That was better. And I can see the same thing happening for Mural. Is like, consultant goes in on an account on their expertise, but they happen to execute it through Mural. And one of the natural follow-up questions is, by the way, thank you for all the work that you're doing.
What was that?
What is that? Yeah. Tell me about this. Yeah. So good. All right. So you mentioned that, that you were critical. I'm assigning that word. You didn't say that. Critical in building the customer success organization. You were VP of CX. Tell me about what was going on maybe in the 3 to 12 months before the transition to chief evangelist. Like, set the scene. What was going on internally, or what was going on in the market, or what was going on for you personally that kind of planted the seeds for this transition, and kind of how did it happen?
Well, I got to go back further than that to answer.
Okay, please.
Because it goes back to one of the reasons why I came to Mural in the first place. So I got let go from Citrix in about February 2015, and I was on the market, a two-time author at that point in time. I tweeted out that I was available, and our CEO pinged me. At that time, the company was 12 people, 11 people. I said, hey, do you want to write and do some webinars for us? We want some ebooks and webinars. And I actually came on part-time. It wasn't anything near chief evangelist at that point in time, but it was an hourly facing role to help evangelize or advocate, let's use a different word, what Mural was about at the time. In 2015, the metaphor of a digital whiteboard wasn't on anybody's radar, certainly not in large organizations. There are very, very few, let's put it that way. So we were trying to build that reputation for us, but also build the awareness in the market of virtual visual collaboration, but also then remote collaboration as well too, that you can do a lot more remote. And I was writing a lot about that. And then I converted to full-time into the customer success role, which for me, career-wise, was a little bit of a sidestep because I have more of a design background. So then when the pandemic hit, we had gotten our Series A funding before the pandemic, but then when the pandemic hit, we got our Series B funding, and it was quite a lot. And the demand was incredible for us during the pandemic. We believe we have a solution that helped a lot of people during the pandemic, and I know that because they tell us that. But it totally benefited Mural. That there's no. I mean, it's obvious there as well too. And we grew 10x on every chart. Every chart in Mural just went right up. And then when I sat down to kind of recalibrate my position in the company, I wasn't going to head up a global team of customer success people, and because I wasn't the right person. But, my CEO said, well, let's go back to the roots and you get out there and promote again. So it actually goes all the way back to the initial attraction between me and Mural anyway, and then formalizing that in a role called chief evangelist.
Love it. So that answers a couple of questions for me. I mean, it seems like you're in a high level of trust. Your initial engagement years ago with the company came via the CEO, a direct relationship. So there's some, the CEO knows you. There's a high level of trust. I can't imagine how helpful those years building the CS org were to the role you have now. And your story matches up with a lot of the chief evangelist stories I've heard. I'm thinking specifically right now of Dan Steinman at Gainsight, who also built the customer success organization there, reached a point where he was like, I'm not really the guy for this anymore. Goes to his CEO and says, thinks he's going to get a mutual positive parting of ways. And the CEO goes, no, I actually need you to stay in front of customers because whenever you do, it creates impact for the organization and value for the organization. So high level of trust internally. Was there any, what other titles perhaps? I mean, obviously it was this outward facing, like in and out content, teaching, engagement, consulting, all the things that you love to do. What chief evangelist? Why chief evangelist?
Yeah, I did gyrations and contortions to try to get away from that, primarily because of the religious connotation that it has, but also I don't know. I felt it was on the one side to a lot of folks, like my family, is like that it's meaningless. On the other side, it might even appear a little bit arrogant. And so I tried to get away from it. I was on the thesaurus, like looking for other words for this. What else could I call myself, right? And things like that. But I came back to chief evangelist only because it's out there, and that's how we met. Ethan, is because it's this thing that's kind of out there. And I guess Guy Kawasaki kind of planted that bug in folks' minds. So I kept it just to kind of latch on to that momentum. Well, what little momentum is there, but I wanted to latch on to that and not create something new because the alternatives weren't better. Let's just put it that way. Have you ever looked for a different title, Ethan? Or
I haven't. It's so funny. So the whole reason you and I are talking right now, Jim, and it is because I reached out to a chief evangelist who was hosting podcasts, Sangram Vajre. He was a co-founder and he was at Terminus at the time. And I proposed hosting him as a guest on his own show because, like most podcasts, it's always about the guest.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, and I think a fun and interesting thing would be your title, Chief Evangelist. And he playfully referred to himself as the accidental evangelist. And he said, I'll do you one better, find 3 more evangelists, and I'll run it as a 4-part series. So I did that almost 4 years ago now. And one of those 4 was Guy Kawasaki, who I just reached out to cold. I found some email address on one of his multiple websites. It's like guy@guykawasaki.com or guykawasaki@gmail.com. I don't even remember. But because I sent a video with BombBomb in Gmail, we track opens, clicks, and plays through the Chrome extension that activates that tool set inside a Gmail inbox. And so I could see that it was getting open and the video was getting played. And I eventually got a reply back because he from publicity at Penguin Random House, because he was releasing a memoir. So he was doing publicity. So so I wrote up 10 things I learned from those 4 chief evangelists, and I published it in my, right hand. I'm the right hand to our CMO, or have been kind of as VP marketing over the past several years. We've co-authored 2 books together now, one at the time that I'm describing here. And he read the post and he was like, I think we need a chief evangelist. I think it should be you. So I didn't even, I didn't
see. Interesting.
And for me, the resistance wasn't around the title per se, but we'll get back into that in a minute. Cause I agree, like chief storyteller isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah.
And so, I was running, I had 2 direct reports that were running 2 important teams. So like 8 or 10 people total. And people are definitely hiring people to build marketing teams and run marketing teams. People aren't out searching for chief evangelists. So I regard it as a little bit of a career risk, but it fit my skill set. It fit what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I agree for all the reasons you described. Like, people don't even know that they have a problem of entrusting their most important, valuable messages to faceless typed out text. And so evangelism, I mean, what Steve said was exactly right. We do. This market needs more evangelists.
Right.
If we are to grow the whole market, and because of who we are and how we go about things, not that we're perfect by any means, there's faith inside this organization that if we can build this market and make this a more normal activity, send video messages, that we'll get our fair share, or more than our fair share. And our greatest threat isn't that company that just popped up and is using a lot of the same language we were using in our marketing 4 years ago.
Right.
That's undercut our price by 50%. It's the fact that no one cares about this opportunity. Right. And so so that was the whole path. So I didn't love and I didn't hate the title. Like you, it does have a foundation. That's even why I decided to do this podcast. Is I think it's a really interesting opportunity. I do want it to mean something. I want less people people outside tech in general and software in particular probably still won't ever recognize this as a normal title. But I think a lot of the folks that you and I are interacting with on a regular basis, I think it can become more normal there. And it's by bringing us together, talking about what it is, perhaps what it isn't, learning the stories of how people got there, what success looks like, different ways we're trying to measure it. And I think what we'll continue to learn, and we've already done this in our conversation here, Jim, is it's messy. We're trying to figure it out. We don't have the answers, but there's something here. They're like all the core ideas. And that's why I love your flame so much, of the 4 C's. And so anyway, I didn't propose an alternative title. I was just honored by the idea that I was seen as worthy of this challenging mission.
Yeah. No, well said. And again, to go back to a comment I made at the outset here, the thing that kind of helped me decide to just go with the chief evangelist title, in addition to some of the things that you mentioned, was how would customers perceive that? Right. So I was looking at that, and there is a little bit of an eyebrow raise, like, what the heck is that? But it does appear attractive, right? So, hey, would you like to have a presentation from the chief evangelist? When you say that to a customer, they go, yeah, I would. I don't know what that is, but there's a shine and a halo and a glow to it as well too. So that was the thing that really got me to move towards that title, was how will that help me interact with customers? How will that help me get customers' attention? And I thought it would, and it has actually. I've seen that actually. I noticed that there is a glow and a halo around it where I do get more responses and emails and gigs and things like that, from the customer side of things.
Yeah, I love it. Again, it's part of your initial answer too. What does the customer need? What does the customer want? What does the
Yeah.
customer think? I love that you went there with this too. And it is, I mean, it is a C-level title, although it's not a traditional one.
Right.
So I think that carries, the assumption of some kind of an executive presence precedes you. It connotes some degree of authority,
Yeah.
and yet it's also non-threatening and
Yes.
curious. And I've been, I'm sure you have too, initial meeting with a prospect or a customer is like, tell me again what this is.
Yeah.
And you describe kind of what you do. They're like, oh, that sounds kind of
Yeah.
helpful. Let's continue. And then of course your attitude carries it from there.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I get all kinds of requests through LinkedIn and emails of people trying to sell me things. So I think sometimes when you approach a customer, they have their dukes up a little bit, and they're like, "Okay, I don't know what chief evangelist is, but he's probably trying to sell me something, right?" So I'll have to say, and I think you do this too, Ethan. I'll have to say, I'm not a salesperson. Like I literally can't sell you anything. I don't have the forms. I can't sell you anything. I'm trying to sell you an
I
idea.
can't even answer the questions of what it costs to
Oh
bring
yeah,
27
What's the
people on
installation?
versus
I don't know.
41.
I'll connect you with the rep who can do that. I'm trying to sell you an idea. I'm trying to inspire you. I'm trying to show you that you have a problem that you don't know you have, and actually, it's an important one to address in your organization. So I'm selling thoughts and ideas, and I'm trying to win hearts and minds, and that kind of thing. But sometimes I'll literally have to disclaim that I'm not selling anything because they come in with their dukes up a little bit and are trying to, protect themselves because they get a barrage of messages and sales pitches all the time, and they don't want another sales pitch, right?
Yeah, I will, and we'll transition a little bit to your thoughts or advice for either aspiring evangelists, current evangelists, or people in companies that maybe should have evangelists.
Yeah.
But I'll just offer one caution in advance, kind of alongside what you just shared there. I get unsolicited emails and LinkedIn messages all the time for things that are so far outside my purview or even range of influence. And I don't know if it's just because they're absolutely terrible at targeting,
Yeah.
or if it's because they have no idea what my title is. So they might
Yeah.
as well see if I'm responsible for IT services, which I'm not. So it's probably some combination of the two, but that's kind of a downside of not being clear what your role is.
Yeah, that's made me raise my eyebrows. I have in my LinkedIn inbox right now, somebody contacted me 3 times about offshore development in India.
Same.
And do I want engineering capabilities? I'm like, you have no idea how far away I am from engineering in this organization. Yeah.
I have no influence there. Like my perspective doesn't super matter unless I'm talking about a customer.
I've been in the company long enough that I know those people, but I don't know what they need in terms of engineering, but they reach out to you. Yeah, they do. So I guess, but Ethan, that might be anybody with a C level or even V level. You're going to get trolled and pinged and all kinds of other things.
Yeah. So if someone came to you, Jim, and was like, hey, I learned a little bit about what you do. It sounds really interesting. I kind of want to go in that direction. What are a couple of thoughts you'd share, or better yet, even maybe what are some of the questions you would ask them to help them understand their situation?
Yeah, I obviously ask them what their aspirations are in general, career wise, and where they want to go. But I think for me, one thing that I would want to start with understanding with them, but also then helping. And this is if I were to mentor that person, that hypothetical person that you just sent to me, would be their writing and speaking and ability to exude inspiration around any topic. It doesn't even have to be the company, the base of my 3 C's there. Just anything that they're passionate about is how do they take that passion and tell stories to other people? How do they take that passion and inspire other people? Like what have they done to already do that? And then I would encourage them ways to get started. Just very, very simple things, start a social media account, write a few blog posts and see how that goes. Join conversations in communities and things like that. But I don't know if that's a straight line. There's not a straight line to being chief evangelist. So I can only reflect on some of the things that laid the groundwork for where I am now. And that was to get involved in publishing, speaking, inspiring in general, trying to think. One of the things that I always tried to do in my writing and my speaking was trying to think of new angles. What hasn't the market thought about already? and then get passionate about those things, right? Myth busting, things like that I've tried to do back then. So I do have a couple of concrete things that I could offer, but is that the precursor to becoming a chief evangelist? I don't know, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I love it. And I guess something I've shared with people in a similar situation, not necessarily about how do I get into this role or title, but like in a mentor type situation, it's like um, the benefit to doing what you just described, no matter your role and no matter your aspirations, is tremendous. People say like, you need to find your voice. And I always say, you don't find your voice, you develop it. You develop it by writing, you develop it by speaking, you develop your point of view. You don't find it. It's not around the corner waiting to be discovered on whole. It's
Totally.
developed like one piece and one effort and one trial and one failure at a time.
Totally. And I mean, if I look back at my last two books, the Jobs to Be Done playbook that you mentioned, and then Mapping Experiences, I had workshopped those 4 and 5 years in advance. So for Jobs to Be Done, I was doing workshops at conference. I was speaking at conferences, and I did a workshop where I was trying to teach people about Jobs to Be Done before I had the confidence to actually write that book, because I would go out and fail. I think I have the new way to explain Jobs to Be Done, as it does not resonate. It didn't hit, or it confused people, or I just said the wrong thing even. So there was a lot of, crash test dummy runs at a brick wall that I took before I got to the point where I could write the book. But the point is, I put myself out there and was willing to incrementally get up on stage and go one step further, right? Okay, I got this down. What's the next little thing? Go out there and be out there, which puts yourself open for criticism as well too. Like, what authority does this guy have? Or that's wrong, or this isn't. So you need to be willing to be open and be out there.
Yeah, it's one of the most daunting things about it. For me, it was like a long, slow emergence, and it came out of being in a very young company that didn't have all of its bases covered. So I started doing a lot of our initial onboard. Like I'd never delivered a webinar, but like onboarding webinars. We got a speaking opportunity at a pretty significant conference in an industry that we were growing in, and it's like, hey, Ethan, that's going to be yours. I'm like, I had to go buy a new suit. I didn't even have like a nice suit at the time. And so, and it is nerve wracking, but it's a long, slow build. Let's flip it a little bit for a leader, whether it's a CEO or similar. How would you advise a leader or a leadership team to think about this opportunity, what it represents? One that's maybe a little bit like, what is this chief evangelist thing? Like that sounds like a luxury item. I don't know if we can afford that, or why would we bother? Isn't this just traditional marketing? What are some words of advice, or maybe provocative questions or leading questions you would ask, or ideas that you would offer to a leader in that position?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to some of the things that we were just saying, is that there's not a direct career path to becoming chief evangelist. So there would have to be some searching, like literal searching, but also soul searching to, who stands out when you think about your field and your industry, the domain that you're in. Who kind of stands out as somebody who's passionate and inspiring and credible and very knowledgeable about the area, and kind of doing that reconnaissance, at least mentally, or maybe even pinging people as well too. And the other side of that, though, is I think there is a little bit of a leap of faith, and that's why I'm so grateful to my organization that they have enough faith and trust in what I do and the potential value that I can bring back to the organization. Because I do think the degrees of separation in causality are pretty far. If I plant this fire now, we might not see the results until later, and those results won't be a straight line either. It's kind of the accumulation of the fires as well too. So that, in a traditional business way, there has to be a little bit of a leap of faith as well too. But I think business folks have that, and they actually want that, I think, to some degree as well too. They want to be able to have a passionate idea about a future vision that they can get behind. And I think that the person that you identify in your reconnaissance to do that has to kind of represent the passion that they themselves have as well too for the field, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate your call there for the leap of faith. And this works with the other things that you're doing. This isn't a silver bullet, but it's also not, um, this disconnected thing. How do you, you've given me so much time already, but I forgot to ask, how do you, like, what is your reporting structure? Do you report to the CEO? Or do you report up through marketing or or
I
CS or like,
Yeah, it kind of bounced around, and what I've kind of learned is it doesn't really matter that much
yeah,
because what
it
I do
totally
is
doesn't.
it's so helicopter, and I can be in all parts of the organization. I've done work with product, with sales, with customer success, and with other marketing, obviously as well too. When I first started, I reported to the CEO, and then I reported to our head of community, and then I reported to our CMO. And now we just created something called the Collaboration Design Institute, and I report over there now too. So for me, it's really just a matter of who do I submit my vacation requests to,
Yeah.
but otherwise, I get so much inbound. I don't know how much inbound you get, Ethan, but I get so much inbound that my dance card is full. Like it's what I say no to. So I don't think there's ever a question of is there not, does somebody need to manage that work? The question is where strategically should Jim be playing the most, right? And I'm still optimizing that. Like I don't know. I thought originally it was going to be webinars and having my own show and being more of a marketing thing. But now I'm starting, well, maybe it's more on the sales side and the customer success side. So I kind of go back and forth. I don't know about you. Have you found your sweet spot yet, Ethan?
No, and I describe my work when I get into this conversation as seasonal.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
depends
right. Okay.
on
Yeah.
it
Good.
depends on what's going on in the business at the
Yeah.
time. Like
Totally.
this calendar year of 2022 has been a key theme has been a refocus on an industry that we've been serving as long as I've been a member of the team, which is over a decade now. But it's a refocusing there, and so it's a re-immersion into that, and listening to podcasts in the space, developing content in the space,
Right.
re-engaging my relationships in the space, um, and actively delivering presentations on behalf of our CSMs or account executives, a prospect
Yeah.
account or a customer account, around some of the things that I was observing
Right.
and where we kind of fit in the picture and some of the challenges in that space and how they can think about it even beyond BombBomb. But then of course, video messages become a character in the story at a certain point. So the answer is no. It kind of like
Mm.
it's ebb and flow. And I do report into marketing, as I said, like
Mm.
Steve, our CMO, kind of advocated for this to happen for me and for the company. And I've always been kind of his right-hand person. And so I'm still in marketing. And so, if the season calls, I'm writing landing pages and
Right.
doing email sequences and doing onboarding videos for a particular vertical or, these kinds of things. And so it really ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But I think the key theme, again, just going back to a leader thinking about this is, not only is it someone who truly understands the customer, understands the space, is capable of doing some of the practical things you described, leading a session, writing competently, etc. It's also, and this is just kind of what you said about your dance card. It's like it's also someone whose editorial judgment or just judgment you trust. Like
Right.
if you have three opportunities, can you trust this person to make the right decision on behalf of the company and the various stakeholders that have competing priorities? That's the other
Right.
challenge of working across,
Yeah.
6 different functions in the org is they all think
Exactly.
what they're doing is the most important thing. And so you
Exactly.
have to kind of weigh that out a little bit and still be available to everyone. And because you can't say, hey, I'm available to help you and your team get your mission accomplished,
Yeah.
but not this time and not the last time either, but probably the next time maybe. So it's like it's a dance card is a great analogy for it because it's difficult to decide, and it really is depends for me on the season and the situation. But like you and a lot of other people I've talked to, the tendency is to say yes, and the challenge is to figure out how and when and where to say
Right.
no.
Yeah. I love the seasonal metaphor there too. And I would, at least from my perspective, I would characterize it as the seasons of the strategy, because
Yes.
you're constantly pressure testing your strategy, and then you get market feedback and something happens and there's a reorg or you're repositioning or there's new capabilities, or, in our case, in March, we announced our aspirations to actually level up our category from whiteboard to what we call collaborative intelligence, that we want to actually be a larger organization, or the domain that we address is a larger organization, which, if you listen to my previous answers, that's what we were doing anyway, so now it's part of our official category. And as part of that, we acquired a company called Luma, who has methodologies, and they're actually a training and enablement company for human-centered design and innovation in organizations. So now you have a where you do work, the space, MURAL, and then how you do it, the methods as well too. And those are just the first two cornerstones in this much larger context that we call collaborative intelligence. And guess what? We're writing a book. I'm co-authoring a book with our CEO right now. So when I think about the last 2 quarters that I did, it was really focused on that content and getting that message honed, right? And things like that. Did I generate a lot of ARR and do a lot of one-off podcasts and webinars last quarter? No, not as much as I had done in the last year. But the season of our strategy kind of dictated that I focus my attention there on that content in the book.
So good. You just opened the door to like 10 more questions, but we don't have time for those in this conversation. I love what you're doing. So I guess just kind of a fun question for you. Personally or professionally, is there like a product or a service or an idea that you evangelize just naturally because you just love it so much?
That's a great question, and you warned me about this. And the first thing that came to my mind, so I'll just I'm just going to say the first thing that came to my mind, and it was during our when you mentioned this yesterday. I was actually walking on the street, as you know, and I am a radical pedestrian and bicyclist, not against drivers or cars, but particularly in urban environments, which I live in. I think we need to spend a lot more attention to the design of our streets for pedestrians, public transportation, and bicyclists and things like that. So I don't know much about urban planning from a formal standpoint, but I actually advocate and am very, very passionate about alternative modes of transportation, bicycle lanes, pedestrian area, all of those things that are kind of, hallmarks of modern cities actually these days. So that's something that I kind of outside of MURAL that I'm an advocate for as well too.
Love it. I'm with you on that completely. And I wonder what, like, I've seen it in, some smart cities type stuff. It's interesting because it's critical, but it doesn't have a home, right? Like it's not in the public transportation conversation. It's probably a background distant thing. Like that needs a home for sure. And I'm with you 100%. Jim, if people have enjoyed this, they want to learn more about the books you've written, they want to learn more about MURAL, they want to connect with you. Where are some places you would send people to follow up on this conversation?
I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I love when people connect. So you can find me out on LinkedIn, and I post there as well too. Twitter as well too. So it's at Jim Kalbach on Twitter, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Jim Kalbach, MURAL. I don't know if there's multiple Jim Kalbachs there, but you can distinguish me by the MURAL role there. I also have a website. On the heels of my last book, The Jobs to Be Done Toolkit, we launched the Jobs to Be Done Playbook is the name of the book. And the toolkit is the website that we have. So it's jdtoolkit.com, jtbdtoolkit.com. And we have courses there that we have an online video course, but we also do live courses. And then we also do this community event once a month as well too. And that's kind of, to answer your question there, the other side passion that I have is around jobs to be done. So I'm out, talking about jobs to be done and teaching jobs to be done as well too.
Awesome. He is Jim Kalbach. That's Kalbach on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Jobs to be done, jtbdtoolkit.com. I am Ethan Beute, EthanBeute. You can hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter as well. I thank you so much for your time, Jim. And I thank all of you for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you learned something, if you got a good idea out of it, share it with somebody else. That's the way these things grow. Jim and I are both of the same mind that this should be a normalized or at least better understood role and responsibility. I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of people in a lot of spaces, and sharing this podcast is one way to spread it. So thank you again, Jim.
Yeah, Ethan, I really appreciate your energy, the podcast, the post that you mentioned, and then the group that you formed as well too. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, a pleasure. That wraps up this episode of Chief Evangelist. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to Ringmaster Conversational Marketing for helping bring these episodes to you. With any thoughts or questions about the Chief Evangelist role, message me on LinkedIn. I'm Ethan Beute, EthanBeute. For show notes and more of these conversations, visit chiefevangelist.com.